What is up, metal and heavy music fans? It's your boy, Flight of Icarus, again with metaltrenches.com, and it is time for Trench Talk. I've got another great interview lined up for you today from the post-hardcore, mathcore, math rock band Satyr. But before we get into that, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, CastBox, Spotify, YouTube, or BitChute. So whichever platform you choose to consume your podcasts on, please do also subscribe so that you can stick around and hear the many other episodes where this came from. And also subscribe to the YouTube channel regardless, because there's lots of other content there. But that out of the way, let's get right into the episode.
All right, I'm Michael. I also go by Soup. We're called Satyr.
I'm Brody. I play drums.
I'm JD. I sing and play guitar.
Well, thanks for taking the time to do this. And I think at least some of you may have seen my review at this point, and I'm kind of curious about reactions in terms of comparisons to some of the things I mentioned, because this sent me down a huge rabbit hole to like stuff I was listening to in the early 2000s, particularly like The Fall of Troy and the Mars Volta and things of that nature.
I thought it was a pretty accurate comparison, honestly. Like all the bands you mentioned, we're all like collectively pretty big fans of.
Could you expand on that?
Yeah, you mentioned Protest the Hero, which I've personally been listening to a lot, like the past like year and a half or so. Like right before we started recording, I got super into them, so that definitely had some like last minute influences on this record.
What's your favorite album from them?
Fortress for sure.
Fortress, okay. I'm a big Volition fan, which isn't always a popular choice, but I just feel like every song on that album is amazing.
Yeah, that album's like way catchier. I know Chris Adler drummed on that record, which is pretty sick.
Yeah, I just learned about that maybe like within the last year, and that just adds an extra layer to how amazing it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, what else? Like where, maybe just start from the beginning. How did you all kind of get together?
So it started as just me and my friend Jack out of a dorm in Georgia State in Atlanta, just kind of like jamming and writing songs together. And just like a year or so later, after just writing like 10 songs together, we started to take it seriously. And we cycled through like 10 members within under a year, I think. And in late 2017, Brody and JD joined after our bassist Calvin had been in the band for a while. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've kept the same lineup. Yeah, and Jack got this like study abroad opportunity, I guess, to go live in Japan for a year. So he decided to take that opportunity, so that forced him to quit, and we got Brody as his replacement.
Basically, all of those original members were kind of in and out real quick for live purposes, and the entire first EP plus a couple songs were written by Soup and former drummer Jack. But the EP wasn't recorded until me and JD joined, and we kind of added our, I guess, flavor to it. You know what I mean? And I mean, the song structures kind of stayed the same, but we tracked the current lineup, recorded the first EP, did the first ever tour. Mm-hmm. So really all the old members were kind of in and out for like random local shows, aside from Jack, who obviously helped a lot with the beginning of the band.
Yeah, everyone except Jack, I think, left within like 2 months of joining, like not long. Because you know how local scenes go. But after JD joined, we recorded the first EP, I don't even know, like maybe under a month after you guys joined.
After we like first started playing live, it was like about a month after.
But like almost immediately.
Yeah, pretty much.
And how long ago was this?
This would have been like October 2017.
I first played live with the band in September 2017. Same with JD. And September. So like a little, like maybe close to 2.5 years, I guess.
Well, and when you all started writing, was there like any particular unifying kind of goal or influence or just sort of mission statement in terms of what direction you wanted to go?
Honestly, not really at the very start. It was Jack and I, our two favorite bands at that time were Dance Gavin Dance and Hail the Sun. So I guess we were just kind of trying to copy that sound more or less, but it quickly diverged away from that. Yeah,
the first EP, you can really hear that kind of sound a lot.
Yeah.
And then, but I mean, like I said, JD and I didn't really, as far as the structures and stuff go, we didn't write anything other than like our own little embellishments and whatnot. But on the new album, I think you can hear a lot more diversity outside of that whole kind of post-hardcore thing.
For sure.
Well, and it's a really solid album too. Like, honestly, I think you all sent me one of the singles, and I've just, February and March have been just absolutely insane. So I kind of was like, all right, I'll come back to this, and then I never did. And then I got the full album, and I finally found the time to like listen to it. I was like, God damn, I wish I had included this on one of my videos for the month too, because it really is like just incredibly solid, and there just haven't been enough albums like in that style, I feel like, that have been just this good to the point where I was listening to it over and over again.
Sick. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Was there something kind of new going into this album, like different from the stuff you had recorded before? Like what's going into Locus?
Yeah, for sure. Like way different, because I mean, like I said, the first EP was basically just Soup and old drummer Jack, and then but with this album, Soup and I wrote a ton of it, like just us pretty much, like, and we did like pre-production this time, whereas the first EP was kind of essentially just shittily recorded like on a cell phone or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you listen to it over and over until you learn it, and then you record it. But with this, we had, you know, the full tempo maps and everything. We did most of it in Guitar Pro, and that kind of enabled us to like write more complex song structures and just make sure everything was more or less perfect before, you know, actually recording it. And I mean, like, I play drums, I don't play anything else, but using Guitar Pro enabled me to actually write like sort of riffs and like structure the songs out and kind of like, you know, switch stuff up, and like especially rhythmically, most of like the weird syncopated rhythms I wrote because I was using Guitar Pro, and there's no way for me to play that on a real guitar because I have no idea how to play guitar.
There's actually one in the middle of Null, the last song in the record. That
there's one riff that we kept the way that I wrote it, which was
so you technically wrote a guitar part.
There you go.
But yeah, that's the biggest difference, is that we, you know, did it all like in pre-production, and that instead of it being mainly Soup writing the first EP, it was a lot more of collaboration really with everybody. But,
nice.
Yeah.
And are any of you guys professionally trained, or are you all self-taught?
I mean, I took like lessons and stuff at the local place in town, but other than that, not really. Like, I was in band. I played euphonium in band, but I don't know if you call that like classically trained or whatever. You went to.
I went to an arts.
I mean, it's formal training.
I don't really, because after I left there, I was just like, I'm just going to teach myself. So I don't really, like, I mean, they didn't teach me anything I know to this day.
Wasn't it a whole, like, major program or something? Like,
it was like, well, my major was vocal and my minor was guitar, but I never had a guitar class. Like, ever. Yeah.
How does that work?
I know, exactly. So I just sang most of high school.
I never took drum lessons. I did band in high school and middle school. That kind of taught me how to read a bit and like some technique, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than that, all the like actual drum kit stuff was basically just kind of me figuring it out. And like, you know, with the internet nowadays, like you see more young musicians just like shredding more than like half of the older people, you know? So, I mean, I feel like a big part of it is just the internet and like watching a million YouTube videos. And it's just really easy to access a lot of information, like educational or otherwise, as far as just like sick stuff to watch, you know, and you kind of subconsciously internalize a lot of that you wouldn't have been able to do even 10 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. It's so much easier to teach yourself anything now, really, especially music.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, it's just anything you can think of. For me, it's usually stuff I need to fix around the house, or we had to like replace our water heater. I'd never done that before. I'm just like, well, just going to YouTube, see if I can figure this out.
Guys on YouTube with excellent tutorials on that shit, you know? It's so easy.
Well, and speaking of YouTube too, I did want to bring this up, so this seems like a fair segue. So I think I had previously been introduced to you guys before, probably via Mathcore Index and their podcast. But I think where I really remember kind of getting the attention is, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you guys submit to the Punk Rock MBA and get a video on there?
Yeah, so when Finn from Punk Rock MBA, he like did his first like me and a friend will review your band series,
Right.
and
Yeah.
the first person he had was Bo Burchell from Seosin, who's
Yeah.
also, as you know, like a super sick engineer and everything.
Yeah.
But I had been a fan of Finn's like since he started the channel. I was really drawn to that kind of content, I guess. So when he put out that video, like as soon as it finished, I stopped what I was doing and I like wrote out a script for this video immediately. And I called my friend and we filmed it like that day or the next day or something. And luckily, Finn and Bo got a hold of it and decided to put us in the actual review video where Bo Show looked over it.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool moment. And yeah, I agree. Like, I really like Finn's content. I think he's kind of carved out a cool niche for himself in there. And I actually had him on an episode of here for Trench Talk, and we talked about mental health because he was kind of just like, dude, I talk about music constantly. Can we literally talk about anything else? And so we did that. But yeah, he seems like a cool dude. Thoughts on kind of the reactions you got to the video and your music?
It was great, actually. We the weeks following that video with Bo Show, we had quite a few people like hit us up in DMs and comments and stuff, being like, "Oh my God, I found you guys from the Punk Rock MBA. Wow, what a coincidence," and whatever. But so it actually did get us a bit of traction for sure.
Could you actually like see a boost in like your analytics or anything like that as a response to the video?
Actually, yeah, our streams did pop up a little bit on Spotify and all that in like the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. It wasn't like overwhelming or anything, but it was definitely noticeable, like the traction we got from it for sure.
Yeah. No, I just think it's really cool. I mean, that's just another element of how the whole space and community has kind of shifted in terms of how you get things out there. And that's part of why like I started doing the podcasting and stuff too, because I'm noticing too now a lot of bands are like, as a part of their brand, sort of, you can't just be, I've talked with a couple bands about this. It's like, you can't just be a band anymore. You have to like be this entire like package if you want to really make something out of it. So now I see like, you know, Jamie Josta has like his own podcast, and then there's a Necrogoblicon like has their own like YouTube channel now with the dude wearing the goblin costume, and he's like in character the whole time. I'm just like, it's crazy. It's just like a Wild West right now, and it's kind of interesting to watch it unfold.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess that's just kind of like the new media we're in, you know, like you can't really get by just being good at one thing anymore. You have to like branch out into different things.
So do you see yourself kind of doing more like funny videos and things like that?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a big part of it. Like that mentality that you were just talking about goes into like our weird like wacky silly type marketing and stuff and all the videos we make to promote things.
Yeah, I even noticed that kind of in the email that I received with the album. It was pretty long too, but very kind of tongue in cheek, not taking itself too seriously, and it worked. I mean, I think people appreciate that. People like kind of like a personality. People like people with a sense of humor, and the whole kind of super serious musician vibe isn't always working nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. And you know, that's just kind of how we are as people. Like that's like how we talk to people online is how we talk to each other in person. So I feel like it's just good to be genuine in that respect, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like people can tell for the most part if you're kind of putting it on. And to me, that's usually like the biggest turnoff. Like I don't really care exactly what a band's sort of vibe is, as long as it seems natural and it's not just like an act. Unless that is their shtick, like Gwar. I mean, it kind of has to be an act at that point. So going back to the album, what's kind of like your writing process look like? Where does that usually start?
Like I mentioned earlier, I guess, I mean, I just see what we did with the last album kind of being what we end up doing going forward, at least like for the foreseeable future, you know, just like mainly, I guess the full rundown of it is Soup kind of had a bunch of like pretty bare bones structures written out, you know, like basically just guitar, no programmed drums or anything really. Maybe like some programmed drums, but
just like basic do copies.
It was just a lot of like pretty basic song structures, and we would like, I can remember maybe a little over a year ago now, we would try to jam them out in person, and trying to remember the entire structure of, a progressive metal or progressive rock or whatever song like that, that's pretty hard. And like getting all these fine details figured out just in your memory and then trying to like learn it on the spot with someone else, it's not very effective. And then as soon as we started really doing it in Guitar Pro, because I had been using Guitar Pro for a while for like other projects and whatever, and it's a great way to program drums specifically. But as soon as Soup had all that, mapped out in the program and he could just send it to me, I could write all my drums and then easily learn it that way and internalize it by listening to it over and over again. And like I said earlier, it enabled me to restructure a lot of the songs and like add new parts and all of that stuff. And it just enables you to kind of perfect a part that way. But yeah, I guess the full rundown that I'm trying to say is like Soup would write a pretty basic structure. I would kind of redo a lot of it, add a bunch of stuff, send it back to him. He would adjust it to the way, a guitarist would actually play it and like give his input. And then it would just be kind of back and forth until it felt pretty good. And then of course we'd play it in person. There were a couple songs where it started out just in person and it kind of stayed there. And like, we finished the whole structure basically like, naturally like in a room with each other by jamming it out. And then we still put it into Guitar Pro and like, like it's a great way to just have like the entire tempo map for when you end up recording it, and make click tracks and all of that. And for me to like program little fills that I wanted to memorize, stuff like that. But yeah, there were a couple songs that were just jammed out in person. There were a couple songs that were written before I joined that like could have been on the first EP that we just didn't put on there. And like just two of them, Not to Scale and Levitator, we recorded those on this album, and those we also put into Guitar Pro, but we didn't really change much. But but overall it's just kind of like a bunch of riffs and then in Guitar Pro, then restructured just back and forth between us two. And it's kind of the main thing. And
that all stays instrumental until like we get the entire structure of the song like hammered out, 100% done. That's all instrumental, and then JD and I will take just the audio file of the Guitar Pro and then start writing lyrics and putting words into certain places and deciding like, okay, this section will be sick for screams, this section will be sick for cleans, and then just so we write everything instrumental first and then put vocals on top.
For the newer stuff, I would like to maybe like, because I think we'll have more time this time, because this recording process was kind of rushed because we actually were planning on having it out earlier than we ended up putting it out. But next time I would like to, maybe have the vocals written and then, analyze a part like, oh, this part could be repeated, and then like almost shape the song around the vocals to an extent, and not just be like, this is the structure no matter what, and then put vocals on it, because then it ends up being like choked in a way, and it's not everything it could be because you're only writing the vocals for the song instead of, like not to just make it more accessible because we're writing what we want to write truly, but, a better song for your own interest, and the vocals, the entire vocal performance is kind of what ties everything together, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Like we would want to more write, going forward for like the next release or whatever, we would want to more write vocals as a song as opposed to writing vocals for a song that's already written, I guess.
Yeah. That's always the part of why I asked that question is I've seen it happen kind of in both directions. I've known bands that literally start with kind of a lyrical concept and maybe even a basic melody there and build from there, and others that are doing more what you're describing here, where it's much more instrumentally driven until the very end. But it's also just interesting for me to hear you describe your own process, because the words you choose are very kind of like, it's very cold and calculated and technically driven, but then what comes out of the other end ultimately is very like bright and energetic and emotional sounding. And like, I'm curious, like in the beginning, are you like shooting for any sort of mood or atmosphere, or is it just sort of like, that's a byproduct of the process?
Maybe like this album is definitely like way more technical than the EP, and a big reason of that is just like being able to do pre-production, and like really like literally type everything out kind of, and like there's a ton of like weird polyrhythm stuff and just like a lot of crazier stuff technicality wise, and then, but at the same time, I think since we did analyze the song structures a bit more this time, there was more thought into like, I think this is going to reach, a higher, I don't know, point emotionally or what have you, like, because there were a lot of moments, like even with the vocals or even just repeating certain parts when we were structuring everything, where it's like, I just think this could hit much harder, like we're not only thinking, oh, but this part's crazier than that part, we should do this. It's like, there was a lot of thought in, like I said, just like having something hit harder emotionally or whatever.
And a lot of the more like emotional parts, I guess, or like the denser parts came out like in the booth in recording, like deciding it would be sick to put like a shit ton of vocal harmonies here or to put a shit ton of guitar dubs here, and just like pinpointing out parts that could really like break through, I guess, and kind of shine as like the sick climactic type part, but we just kind of figured that out on the spot, I guess, more or less.
Yeah, I guess a lot of like the technicality stuff was all figured out while structuring the song. Like none of the structures changed when we were recording, but like a lot of the vocal harmonies and like guitar harmonies and overdubs and stuff like that. A lot of that was kind of thought on the spot in the studio. But yeah, the whole structure and like, like weird odd time shit and technical stuff was all kind of done previously. So, but I guess like emotion and stuff like that could come out of the structure as well as like a lot of the melodic stuff that came with the vocals and stuff like that.
Yeah. And like I've always been into bands like Neck Deep or like Tiger's Jaw or something, like really outside what most of our fans, I would guess, would listen to. But like I like those bands because of how like big and emotional some of their songs get at some points. So I've always enjoyed tying that kind of aspect or that kind of thinking into Satyr's songwriting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it brings me back to Protest a Hero again, too, because to me, that's like the prime example of that. There's like multiple songs that are playing in my head right now where I'm like, shit, that's the part that like almost makes me cry when they when they sing that part. It's like they're really good at doing that. Is there any, so when you do get to the lyrics and the writing of the vocal parts, like, are there any sort of like common themes that come up in that area?
The lyric writing for this album was pretty weird actually, because it was mainly like you and me, JD, just like taking a bunch of lyrics that we had individually written just like in our notes app on our phones and shit from the past like 2 years prior, and just like
not even that, like 4, maybe 3 or 4 for me.
Yeah,
it's like some of those songs. Well, some of the lyrics that I wrote for another band that I was in, but like we just kind of stopped.
But so. I guess like both of us just took lyrics that we had written just to write them, like not necessarily for any type of project, but just to writing lyrics just to write, I guess. And we realized that we kind of touched on similar themes and like similar tones, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so we just kind of compiled a bunch of shit that we thought was good from the past 2 or 3 years or whatever, and like picked out the best sections of lyrics and put those to the music for the album. But a lot of it just kind of revolves around like existentialism and like introspection and just like really just like really thinking about your own life from a very personal standpoint, like in your own head, stream of consciousness type stuff.
What got you into that? Like books, movies, particular people in your life?
I guess like events that happened in life. I don't want to get too deep.
Yeah.
But, like, that, and like I will say, like listening to the second Periphery album, honestly, just like that whole theme of that album and the way he just like worded stuff, or just like the vocabulary he used, I was just like, shit, like I don't know, like it made me move beyond like just this basic way of wording things or like how to convey your emotions.
Yeah,
it's just like shit. I mean, like there's more to it than just being like, I'm sad.
Yeah.
I died.
Yeah,
like it's just like I don't know. It made me think more outside the box, I guess.
Yeah, I took a lot of inspiration from John Mess from Dance Gavin Dance, and just his like very spastic, just chaotic style of lyric writing, just like literally whatever the fuck comes to his mind, he'll write it out and then put it to the music. So that, yeah, just that kind of approach is how I would mainly do it, I guess.
Let me ask this: if you guys weren't making music, what would you be doing besides that, or what are you already doing on the side?
I'd be dead. I would literally, I don't know. Like, that's like the truth, honestly.
Dude, yeah,
like
I
my
honestly
dad.
don't know either.
I don't know. I mean, like, besides my dad, like, doing music, I've always thought about that. I'm just like, shit, I really like this shit.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really see myself doing anything outside of it. Kind of
Yeah.
sucks.
I probably would have just fallen into like the more business side of the industry, I guess. I mean, I work at Center Stage Theater in Midtown Atlanta right now with a company called Rival Entertainment, and they're like the only competitors really to Live Nation in Atlanta. And we put on a bunch of like bigger festivals and stuff, like One Music Fest, and we hosted the big Foo Fighters show at the stadium a couple years ago. So I probably would have just ended up doing something like that, like working in live events, like more on the business side, but still in music. I don't know. What about you, Brody?
Yeah, if I wasn't playing music, hopefully I'd be doing something involved with music at least. Otherwise, I have no idea, like, whether that would be like, you know, just engineering or producing or whatever. Not that I have like a ton of experience with that or anything, but like, I don't know. I can't see myself doing anything outside of music. I mean, maybe I would if I didn't.
I literally just said I'll die.
Well, hopefully don't do that. Let's avoid that. I mean, are there other things that like you enjoy and are passionate about outside of this though? Like, I know some people, like, I'm really into like film in particular. I've had other bands talk about how they're like super into video games in their downtime. I mean, what other like hobbies are in the mix for you?
I play a good bit of video games. I've been playing some RuneScape lately.
Hell yeah.
Honestly, like, I personally don't really have many hobbies outside of music. I don't know, smoke a lot of weed.
Occasionally pull out the emulator on my phone.
Yeah.
Play some old classics, but that's about it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any real hobbies outside of drumming, I guess. I mean, I like movies a lot, but I still wouldn't even call myself like a film buff or anything. Like I know, like I love watching movies and I know a lot of movies, but I still wouldn't even consider that like I'm huge into movies or like film or whatever. But and then I mean, like, I like food a lot and I watch a ton of like food videos on YouTube, like all the time. Yeah. But I still wouldn't even call myself like a big food guy because I don't know. I just feel like I'm really basic with all that shit. Yeah. But I love that stuff. I love food. Yeah. I love food. Other than that, though, like, really, I just fucking, like, if I'm not playing music, I'm listening to music. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm watching drum videos, which is still listening to music, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, I get into, like, YouTube holes on various topics. Yeah, like random shit. Music. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I would call that, like, a hobby, though. It's definitely interests. Yeah. Like, I'm following the race a lot, but, yeah, I don't know. Not really.
Yeah. No, I meet musicians on different sides of the spectrum, and it sounds like you guys fall into more of like I remember like way back when I was younger and I didn't really know about a lot of bands, and I was introduced to Van Halen and I learned about, you know, the Van Halen as a guitarist and how he was like that too. Like, while all the other band members were partying and getting crazy, especially David Lee Roth, like, he's in his room writing more guitar parts and practicing. Like, he just ate, breathed and lived guitar constantly. And, you know, it's just different strokes for different folks, but it sounds like you all kind of fall more into that category.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So what about, you got shows coming up or shows that you've played that you've like really enjoyed, and what's been the response to the new material so far?
Yeah, we just did a very short run this past weekend. We had our release show in Atlanta last Friday, and then following that, we went down to Miami and then Orlando, just a short 3-day run. but especially the release show in Atlanta at this venue called 529. That was, in my opinion, that was by far the best show we've had as a band so far. That was like a 250 cap room, and we barely sold it out. It was like 240 tickets or something. But it was just really cool to see the whole Atlanta scene, like everyone we've met over the past 2 years, just come together in one room at one time. And show support for the record. But that show was super sick. There was a lot of moshing and a lot of crowd surfing.
Yeah, it was sick.
Hell yeah.
It definitely exceeded our expectations for sure.
Yeah,
that's no small crowd. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but we have some shows coming up in May. We've got a 10-date run that we're in the process of booking right now. But we'll be going through the Midwest, like up to Chicago and through Nashville, and then down the East Coast through Philly and DC and a couple North Carolina dates. But yeah, so those are the only live shows we have planned for right now, but we are trying to play a lot more this year, so we're getting some more stuff going.
Yeah, after that there definitely will be more later this year, but as for right now, what's officially happening is that little run in May.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's cool though. Do you know like any bands you can say that you're playing with?
We'll be playing with Outrun the Sunlight in Chicago.
No bands that we're
cool.
touring with, but yeah, we're doing that in Chicago. We're playing with a band called In Angles in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah.
No bands that we're like hitting the road with. It's just kind of like it's more of a DIY kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I understand. Believe me.
I'm sure you get the struggle.
Oh yeah. I hear all about it from all these different bands too. I mean, that's part of why I was impressed with the idea of 240 people, because some of the bands I talk to on here, I catch them when they finally come in town for a show and we meet up and they get some. I've seen a couple where they got like a pretty janky venue at the last minute they got thrown into, and then there's like 5 people in the crowd, and it's such a huge bummer because like they're all the reason I have them on here is because I think that they deserve the attention, and so yeah, being able to pull that kind of crowd is a great thing.
We've definitely played shows.
We've played some.
Oh, I'm sure.
Actually, like forever ago, but
we played to the bands playing with us.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Could you tell me any like particular stories from that stand out of like the show Nightmare?
I think the worst show we've ever played was in Tonawanda, New York, which is right next to Niagara Falls. And like literally, except for us and the band we were touring with, Things Amazing. Except for us, the only person who showed up that wasn't working there was the guy we were staying with that night.
Even the local bands playing this show, they left after they played.
Oh no! Oh,
but then we saw after, and that was sick.
It was just booked with bands that like weren't even in our genre. It just didn't matter.
Yeah, it was a really weird show.
Pretty stupid. That was like 2 years ago. Yeah, like one of our first ever runs, like ever.
Yeah.
That's awful. That's God. It's just I feel for the bands too when I walk in, and like there's one in my head in particular that was just a couple months ago that I was particularly frustrated about, because this was a band that I just feel like could easily pull a really good crowd if they got like enough marketing around it and the right venue, and it was just like literally me and a couple of the bands and maybe like 5 other people just like in a standing space, and it's just like it's so you feel for them. and I imagine being on stage it's even worse, because it's like, man, what are we even doing? But at least you can get lost in the music.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of it definitely comes down to just how you book it, I guess, and like making sure that you're hitting up a good band that you know is going to draw in the area. And sometimes that's easier than other times,
Yeah.
But I think us doing runs like that has definitely made us realize like it's really not worth it to travel that far if you're going to be playing a band that's not even similar to your sound, and they're not going to draw anybody. And even if they did draw people, those people that like that band that sounds totally different from you might not give a fuck about your band. You know what I mean? So it just that really teaches you to, really invest some time into booking the tour well if it's a DIY tour, you know what I mean? And then after even doing that, making sure you're marketing it to the right people and all of that stuff. So yeah, we couldn't like do better DIY tours without having done those shitty ones, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm glad we did all those shitty out of state shows, because it just like taught us a lot about like just like resilience, I guess, and like just like working together as a unit despite having shitty turnouts and whatever.
Yeah, and those were like our first, tours ever.
Like,
even
of
if
course
you're not,
they were going to be bad.
Yeah, and like you just need to learn how to tour. That even outside of playing the shows, like just driving and being around the same guys every day,
Yeah.
I mean, like just for like a week, even, I mean, you need to learn how to do that, even if the shows suck, So it's better to do that early on and just kind of like learn what it's like, and then start playing shows that are actually worth playing,
Yeah, pay your dues, more or less.
Yeah, I was gonna say that exact same thing. Pay your dues, or also just sort of crawl before you walk. Everybody's got to go through those growing pains. I know that I don't think anything's formalized yet, but I saw that Mathcore Index has been teasing a Midwest edition of the Index Fest. I don't know if that's something that y'all have been watching or would be interested in doing if that if that came to fruition.
I've been kind of following that that whole process, because I was definitely following the first two Index Fest they did, the one in Brooklyn and the one in LA, I think. But I mean, if they wanted to have us on, I would definitely be down to do that. I think that would be sick. I've been a fan of their whole platform that they've had for a while, and that podcast that they mentioned us on, I think it was our song Escapism, that got us a good few listeners very early on, and that introduced us to Ferolux, who we did a show with last year.
Ferolux is cool. Yeah.
Like end of 2018.
Yeah. But it was one of their, I think it was like their second to last show ever. We got to play with Ferolux, and we met them through being on the same podcast episode together from Mathcore Index. But yeah, those guys are cool guys. I like Christian a lot. If they wanted to have us on the festival, I think we would do it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. They're cool dudes, and they have such a like. They don't have the largest following, although I'd say relatively speaking, it's pretty big. But I think what's more important is that they have a very loyal following. Like, people are very much engaged in the page and the podcast and commenting and liking and responding and everything, and that counts for so much. So
yeah,
props to
I don't
them.
know if you're in that Facebook group that they have, but that group, it's kind of wild sometimes, to the shit they post in there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they're all very supportive of their niche like collective of bands, I guess, like Inside the Beehive or Space Cowboy and Callous Cowboys, all those guys.
Callous Cowboys, man, they're going places. I'm telling you, like they're already like they're getting some traction. It's cool to follow their Instagram account and kind of see pictures from some of the shows they've been playing, because that was definitely one of my top 2 favorite albums of last year for sure.
Me too, honestly. I love that record, Down Mars. Fantastic.
Any other like favorite albums, either that have come out this year or in the past year?
P4, Periphery 4,
new
for sure.
Hell yeah, man, so good.
Honestly, I should look through my
new Danny Brown is sick. We were listening to that.
I have not listened to that yet, but I'm a huge Danny Brown fan, and I really loved Atrocity Exhibition, but I heard this one's very different from that.
It's still, I mean, like, if you like that, you'll like the new stuff, I think. I mean, JD first showed me Danny Brown, and like, he's like one of my favorites now. Yeah. And then as soon as the new one came out, I got into it,
Yeah.
New North Lane is sick, I think. I've always been really into them.
Yeah.
I don't know what else came out this year or last year.
I mean, this is 2018, but the newest Rolo Tomasi record is one of my favorites of the past few years for sure. That record blew me away when I first heard it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good shit coming out, and P4 especially. Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. I love too that they took a chance opening your album with a like 20-minute track.
Yeah.
And they played it live when they came here too, which I just thought was really cool and unexpected. But and then having Mikey from Sikth do vocals on part of it and everything, that was like full circle for me, because I've been a big Sikth fan for some time now.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sikth is awesome.
I had never heard of them before I heard Reptile, and I found out that that vocal feature in the middle or whatever was from the guy from Sikth.
Yeah.
And one day a friend and I just decided to go on a Spotify hole, and we landed on the newer Sikth album. I think it was 2017. But
Yeah.
we played the first song from that, and I was just like, holy fuck, like where has this been all my life, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
when you hear that stuff, you can totally see how Periphery became a thing.
Yeah,
If you just Periphery, you're like, oh, they liked Meshuggah, but then you hear Sikth, and it's like, oh, I see where like all of the melody and like just the weirdness comes in. Obviously, the Meshuggah influence is there, and like Meshuggah is like my favorite band, so obviously I respect them.
I'd love to have Sikth on here too, because
I wish they were bigger.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say too. Is what's interesting is, so I got into them probably just a year or two before Periphery even started, and so they had already disbanded for their first time when I came across Death of a Dead Day, which, if anybody listening has not heard that album, that is a fucking amazing album. And I heard Bland Street Bloom in particular. I saw the music video for it, and I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? Like, that was basically my introduction to, like, gent as we know it now. Besides Meshuggah, obviously, but, like, that more kind of progressive metalcore take on it. And I did a reflection video talking through, like, you know, my history with Periphery and, you know, having been with them ever since Icarus Lives came out and just loving that band. But like you said, like, I feel like Sikth should be bigger, and the only problem is that they just weren't right place, right time. Like, I feel like Periphery hit right place, right time, had the right marketing, and Sikth was doing basically what they're doing before them, but it didn't have, the timing wasn't right, and they deserve such a bigger audience, though.
Yeah, they're from the UK, and like they've just got they're a little weird too, you know.
Yeah.
Like I could definitely see getting turned off by that.
Yeah.
But you definitely still, either way, I think if you're at all into modern progressive metal stuff, you have to at least like respect that they kind of did. Like, without them, Periphery wouldn't be.
They like
Periphery.
Started it in a lot of ways, like this whole new sound.
The whole gent thing, definitely Meshuggah kind of early 2000 shit. But.
Yeah. Well, and Meshuggah, obviously, another big one for me. I've got a tier list video coming out for them soon. I spent a day just marathoning all of their albums over again, in one go, and then like talking through, like, just reflecting on, you know, what it's been like to listen to them for a fucking long time too. Because I caught them in high school, hearing Destroy, Erase, Improve, the opening track. Shit, I talk about it all the time and blanking on it.
Future Breed Machine?
Yes, Future Breed Machine. And I saw them play that live with Code Orange open for them, and then they played that song as like one of their final tracks, and they fucking like nearly brought the house down.
Yeah, that's sick. Yeah, they're like my favorite band of all time.
They're so good. I feel like people kind of shat on their last album too, but I don't understand why. Like, I feel like it's still really good. Yeah, Violent Sleeper Reason.
I like it a lot, but I mean, I feel like they're at that point where they're a classic band now, you know, in a way.
Legacy act.
Yeah, it's like, I like the album, and it is a little different, which is sick that they're still kind of changing it up, you know, and they recorded it live and whatnot, but like, but it's like, I've got my favorite Meshuggah album, you know, like, I don't feel like they're going to top like Obzen or Catch 33 or anything. And like, if they did, amazing, like, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm still going to listen to every new thing they put out, but I definitely like Obzen and Catch 33 and like really all those, like, you know, really like everything up until the last like maybe 10 years ish. Like, I still love all the new stuff, but all of those early albums are just like some of my all time favorite things ever, you know?
I'm kind of all over the place because I love Nothing, and that's one of my favorites because that was kind of my first like album. That album was what was coming out when I got into them, even though like my first introduction was hearing Future Breed Machine. But for me, it's all about Koloss. I think Koloss is their best album, quite frankly. Like, every song on that album is a complete banger and could be a single. Like, I think it's their most consistent release, and I just love it to death. And I talked about this on the recording too, but it's interesting when I hear people like yourself name Catch 33 as one of their favorites, because that seems to be like the most divisive album. Like people either love or hate that album.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I definitely get what you mean about Colas. It's like it is kind of all bangers, but I just love like the weird shit. Like, I mean, like Nothing is also kind of seems like all bangers. It's like each song stands on its own. But then like with Catch 33, when they started like bringing in that dissonance and like shit's like flowing into the next thing and all of that stuff, and you can kind of hear that on Obzen too. And then like their EP, which I guess is just one song. Like all of that stuff. It's just so like out there. I love it.
I really like the IEP, but I just am not. I can't get into Catch 33. I've like tried multiple times over my lifespan. I just can't get into it.
Dude, like just In Death is Life and In Death is Death. If you just like listen to that. Yeah, dude.
I do like those parts. That you named probably my favorite part of the album.
Yeah, dude. That's the big banger. And then the like final kind of part of the whole album, Dehumanization, is like my favorite Meshuggah breakdown ever. If you just listen to that song, you might and like just kind of solo in on that, you'll see what I mean. It's sick. That's all I'll say.
I'll keep trying. I'll never stop. I'm such a fan of theirs that like I'll just keep checking it out.
I'm glad we took the time to talk about Meshuggah.
Hey man, that's what this podcast is all about. The conversation goes where it needs to go. I did want to also ask, with it being a new decade and everything, pretty much every band I've been asking, like within your genre, who do you feel like, or which albums do you feel like are the defining albums of the last decade?
Like P2.
Yeah. A little smaller band, but I think the Cat Company EP is pretty fucking phenomenal. It's like that's like peak swancore, quote unquote. It's got that marionette. Yeah. Dance, Gavin dance. Yeah, exactly. And they're friends, so you gotta shout out the friends. Right. But yeah, as far as this genre, I think Mothership by Dance Gavin Dance is probably their strongest record for like that area of this sound.
Maybe Language by the Contortion.
Yeah. False Idol by Veil of Maya.
Yeah, that's my favorite Veil of Maya album, honestly. Yeah, and I was into Veil of Maya before they had clean vocals or anything, but that newest album, I think, is the best, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Language, Contortionist, for sure. Yeah. I guess Process Zero is a little older. That's not.
Yeah, but I did include Volition on my top 25, I think, of the last decade, because that just barely made it in. I think it was 2010.
Nice. Yeah, you're right.
I'm hoping that they put out some more stuff. I mean, I liked their last EP that they kind of delved out over 6 months, but it's been pretty quiet since then.
Yeah, wasn't that like one of the first like subscription based releases? It was like I think it was a Bandcamp subscription or something, but they released a song like every month or something, right? Pacific Myth.
Yeah, it was an interesting model. But I'm still I'm a big physical release guy still. So even though I respected it and thought it made sense for the time, I was still kind of like, yeah, but I want the CD. Like I would subscribe if also there was like a tier where, okay, and then at the end you get the physical copy, but there was no version of that. So I had to like wait until they finally dropped like some copies. And I'm not sure if it was this with that project or one of the other ones, but I think I heard that they ended up getting like fucked by the person who was like handling the financial end of things, and they took the money and run or something. So maybe that's why it's been quiet. I don't know, but I did see something. I don't know if it was on this one or when they crowdfunded Volition. Something went wrong there, so got to be careful with who's handling your money.
I know Volition was like without a label or anything. And what I think that was one of the first like more major releases that was like entirely crowdfunded. Yeah.
Which makes it all the more impressive to me. Like it's just such a rock solid album.
But I get what you're saying about physical releases, though. I mean, like even just us and Armored sales, like by far we've sold more CDs and even just our pre-order of our vinyl that we've had up for like a week Like we've sold more of CDs and vinyl than any shirt or even the socks that we make. Like that shit blows clothes out of the water. It's crazy. People still want something that's attached to the music to hold in their hands, even if they may not even like own a CD player, you know, like people would still want to buy the CD because it's the record and it's physical and you can look through it and like it's a memento, you know?
Yeah. It's just something about the feeling of like either picking it off the shelf or getting it in the mail and opening it. Niles described the like smell of opening a new CD, like that just, and being able to, you know, actually feel the booklet and look at the lyrics and everything. And yeah, it mostly just ends up sitting on the shelf after that. But I don't know. I'm old school that way. So I would get into vinyl if I could afford it, but I just buy way too many albums for me to be able to do that. Sick. Another thing I like to ask bands when they're on here, given that this is really like an underground band focus, what other bands from your area would you like to shout out that you feel like deserve more attention?
There's a band from Atlanta called Spirit Healer.
Yeah.
They put out a sick album, and I don't feel like there's been nearly enough hype around it. So anyone listening should check that out. It's kind of like cool prog metal, I guess, gent stuff.
Contortionist type vibes.
Yeah, kind of. I think Ackle from Tesseract mastered it.
Yeah, he did.
I think he mastered it. Yeah. And then the same dude that engineered REP and our album, he engineered and mixed it, I think.
Nice.
I know he engineered it. But yeah, Spirit Healer, really sick.
Callous Dad Boys for sure. They're good friends.
Yeah, I had Carson on here, and we had a great conversation about Red Letter Media. That was our tangent.
Awesome. They do all the like Star Wars reviews and shit, right?
Yeah, and then they also do like this series called Best of the Worst, where they watch like horrible VHS movies that people have sent them and comment on them and movie reviews and shit. Just a bunch of dudes from the Midwest drinking beers and talking shit. It's one of my favorite YouTube channels for sure.
Yeah, dude, I've watched all the Mr. Plinkett videos on the Star Wars prequels and shit. I love that.
Yeah, man. You gotta subscribe to the channel because there's so much other shit that is just like they have me rolling laughing half the time.
Oh yeah. Oh, Champagne Colored Cars.
Yeah.
They're a good band from here in Atlanta. They're good friends of ours, but they're like kind of on the like more twinkly math rocky side, I guess. Like
they've got some
I just
cool
call it
like rhythmic shit though. Yeah,
they're super good. They had their self-titled EP came out in 2018, I think. But it's really good. Champagne Colored Cars for sure. Check them out if you like twinkly emo math rock type stuff.
Oh yeah. Anyone else?
I don't know.
Is this only Atlanta bands or just like
we can expand? What other bands?
That band we mentioned earlier in Ingles, we're playing with them in Philly. Yeah. They're hella sick.
Cat Company again, of course. Pulses is sick. They're another like progressive post-hardcore type band from Northern Virginia.
Oh, there's a band from Toronto that my friend who shares my name, Brody, and he's their drummer. They're called Telomere. Super sick, kind of post-hardcore, but it's like super like rhythmic. Like they've got like weird car bomb modulation shit in there. My other band Exist played with them in Toronto, but honestly, I feel like they fit Satyr's sound way more because they're kind of that post-hardcore thing. But yeah, Telomere from Toronto. I think there's another band called Telomere, but the one from Toronto that's like prog shit, really sick.
That sounds really familiar. I wonder if I've heard their stuff before. I get a lot of Canadian bands on here too, so.
Yeah, I think they're about to put out their first single, actually. They might have like some demos or something up, but I know that their EP is like recorded and they've got a single coming out. But yeah, they're amazing.
Sunstrife from Orlando. We just played with them a few days ago on our show, but they're like super crazy rhythmic, just like instrumental progressive metal type stuff. It reminded me a lot of like Pliny or like Intervals, but Sunstrife in Orlando, really, really good. I think they have 2 EPs up.
Cool.
Slayer.
Slayer, fucking Slayer. Anything else you want people to know about your bands, the project moving forward, upcoming dates, things of that nature, where to find you, all that?
All our social tags are at SatyrATL for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. We're going to be posting a lot on YouTube in the coming weeks and months. We've got a live session coming out with some songs from the album. We've got more playthroughs. Video. We've got another music video that I guess will be out by the time this comes out for our song Aesop that features Brody as a tennis star.
Yes.
We've got playthroughs. We'll have that tour coming out.
Yeah, we'll be touring a lot more, and we'll have new music out.
Hopefully next year. 2 years.
Yeah, but like our new album Locus is out on all streaming services, but it's Locus, not Locust the Bug or anything like that. Yeah, Satyr, pronounced Satyr, not Satyr.
Satyr, not Satyr.
But yeah, if you like post-hardcore with sick rhythms, check us out. Yeah.
If you like wacky promotional videos, follow us on Facebook and shit.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and I recommend starting with the track Bird personally. That's my favorite off the album. That song is just fucking sick. Aesop is also really good, but Bird definitely was the one that like leapt out at me from the very beginning. It was like, oh yeah, these guys are on my level. I'm all about this.
Yeah. If you like blast beats in the first 4 seconds of songs, Bird is for you.
Fuck yeah. That's me. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for taking the time to do this, and especially doing it as a band. Like, I know it's really hard to coordinate schedules and everything, and it's pretty rare that I actually get like multiple band members all here at the same time. So it makes for kind of a more fun conversation and a more enjoyable listening experience for everybody else. So, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I'm glad we could make this work.
Yeah. Man, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And you know where to find me. Keep my contact info and keep sending me shit. And if you ever want to come back on, by all means, this is a open platform, open invitation at all times if you want to talk shit about anything and everything. So yeah, just let me know.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
We'll probably take you up on that soon.
All right, awesome. And that'll do it for another episode of Trench Talk. Thank you, as always, for listening. I really appreciate it. Once again, the album is Locus, Locus, from Set. I almost said it the way they said it. Satyr, Satyr. And you can find that pretty much everywhere right now. I'm looking at it on Bandcamp right now. That's my preferred platform, but you can find it on Spotify and everywhere else is wherever you prefer to consume your music. But yeah, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. You can listen to this podcast once more on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Castbox, or BitChute. And so whichever platform you prefer, make sure you've got it subscribed. And also, regardless of which platform, also subscribe to the YouTube channel, because there's lots of other content there that will not be on the podcast that I kind of referred to during this episode. So tier lists, album reviews, things of that nature. But also, if you hop down the description, you can find links to all of our social media. Also encourage you to join the email newsletter list, which is something I send out personally every Friday to keep you up to date with things that are going on at metaltrenches.com. And also, if you're a returning listener, you feel like you're getting added value out of this, I really strongly encourage you to consider contributing just $1 a month to our Patreon or Subscribestar. It really makes a difference in covering the overhead costs and also just justifying the time that I put into all this. But I think that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.